Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, there's a cab on here now. We didn't get a chance to video it. Had Mike himself come up. He gave me a hand with this, and it was nice of him to come up and give me a hand because I didn't have anybody to give me a hand putting this on, because it is a super cab. It's a little more tedious. So I'm going to go ahead and we took some pictures of the way it was hanging. That way we could get it on. We used the skid loader again, but it went on a little bit different. And like I had said in the previous video, we got one fork in the cab and one fork outside the cab, and we were able to support it on the doghouse here. So we have some pictures of that. I'm going to show them to you now. And then, once we got this on here, we ran into a couple little issues, and we're going to go ahead and show those issues to you, but give you a general update on what we got going on here. We got a lot of stuff put on. A lot of things are connected now, and hopefully we'll have this thing running here in a couple days, as long as everything goes smoothly. But I'm going to walk you around this cab, show you what we ran into, and show you what we did to solve those little problems that we had, and hopefully we'll get this thing going. As you can see, we have the new pulleys put on here, and we had mentioned in the previous video about these two pulleys, being able to purchase those. And we have our liquid line here installed, and obviously a new orifice tube is also in here. We have all of our vacuum lines hooked up here. We do not have the vacuum tank in yet because we don't have the inner fender liner here, but we do have the vacuum pump hooked up. The four-wheel drive solenoid is over here. We have our ground wire hooked up, and amongst other connections here. Over here, you're going to finally see that we have all of the inline tube stainless steel lines put on. They do fit really, really well, even able to use the factory clips here. You can't really see this one, it's buried down in there. However, they do bolt up really, really well. They've lined up with everything, and a little bit of tweaking was necessary to just make sure everything fits really well. One thing I will make note of is, because these are stainless, you really, really have to wrench them on there. And if you buy a cheap set of wrenches, you'll have issues with them. So to give you an example here, I had bought these. These are crow's feet line wrenches, or line sockets, whatever you want to call them, but they're a crow's foot style line wrench. All right. I bought these as well. Now, I bought these first because I was being cheap. These are a Craftsman brand. These are junk. And these were more money than anywhere else. So they spread open. These, made by Snap-on. These don't spread. I put some serious torque on some of these line nuts with these, with a long 3/8 ratchet, and I had no issues. These do not spread. So if you were doing brake lines and you need to put torque on them, which generally you do, especially with your stainless lines over here, spend the money on a good set of line wrenches, because they'll pay for themselves in aggravation. But the stainless lines do look nice. They fit nice. These are really, really nice. Once again, they're factory clamp there. Another clamp here to hold these together. I did tighten these up half decent, and found that they were still siphoning because we still had a little bit of fluid in the reservoir here. But the one was siphoning, and ended up retightening it with the crow's foot Snap-ons, and they made a big difference. It has not leaked anymore since then, but you really got to crank on these to get them to seal up. So do not be afraid to crank on them. The only thing that I probably do not like about these inline tubes is this one brake line here. It goes back and around and goes down around the front. All right, and you see that union there? It's kind of a bad place for a union. It's kind of hard to get to. if you ever have to service it, it's in and amongst everything else. You got a steering box, steering shaft, the water pump outlet, your power steering pump. There's a bunch of stuff there. It's not really that accessible. It'd have been nice if they would have taken that union and put it a little bit farther up on the frame, because this line does run all the way along the front here and to the other side. So it's not like they couldn't have made it a little bit longer to come up onto the rail here, where it would be at least a little bit easier to get to and serviceable. Now you'll notice down in here, there's a whole bunch of plugs. When you're doing this, and we'll see, let's come down here and look. When you're doing these trucks, so you can see there's a bank of five plugs here, and there's 3 more up here. And you can see the one there. All right, these plugs, some of them, will plug into those plugs up there. That's these guys down in here. So whenever you're disassembling your truck here, if you're not real sure where these plugs are supposed to go, and not real sure about which way the orientation would be, make sure that you put zip ties around them, color coded, or tape them, anything like that, so that you know where they go. Sometimes they like to just fall into place, but sometimes they don't. We also have the pyrometer wire ran here. It's not secured to anything. And we also have the new pyrometer installed into the manifold back here. So we still have to hook this up, obviously. Inside, we have the dash installed. The steering wheel is installed. It's not attached to the steering linkage, so it's free, and the key is to the on position. If you take your steering column out, always make sure that it is in the centered position, okay? You don't want it like this. See how it's locked that way? You don't want it that way, okay? Because whenever you go to take your steering wheel out or your steering column out, there is a clock spring back here that runs all of your cruise buttons, all right? Well, if you don't have your steering centered and you have the steering wheel centered, then you can compensate and straighten this wheel out and straighten the wheels out to make sure that this will be straight. However, if this is off one turn, full revolution, and you hook it up the way that it is, and you're thinking it's straight and thinking the wheels are straight, you have a very good possibility of tearing the clock spring that's internal. If you're not sure if your steering wheel is in the centered position, the steering wheel should turn 3 full revolutions each way. Now, you want to do this whenever it's quiet, you don't have a lot of noise. You can listen to the clock spring inside the column here. It can get tighter, and you can hear it getting tighter or hear it getting looser. So you can center it that way, or you can pull the whole steering wheel off, pull the clock spring off, recenter the clock spring. There's usually directions written on the clock spring that you can actually recenter the clock spring and then put it all back together. That is the safest way to do it if you're unsure of doing it the way I described. We have everything plugged in. Still have to put the brake cable on, and then also hook up the emergency brake cable. You can see it's laying there. But we still got to tidy up some wires here. This is for the chip that needs to be put in, and we got everything re-plugged back into the fuse box here. In 2002, they went to the round plugs on these trucks. As you can see, there's round holes here. So you get the pass-throughs instead of the plugs, which was on the 2001 and older trucks. You can see you have the round holes here. Now, they started using these round holes in 2002, and they ran those all the way up until 2007. I don't know what they did in the 2008 and up trucks. I do know that there were some minor changes here and there. But if you have a truck and you're doing a cab swap and you don't want to mess with doing anything to the firewall, depending on what year your truck is going to depend on what cab you ideally would want. You can make either one work. It's a lot easier to go from the round holes to the square holes because you can do a firewall cut and so on and so forth. But that's something to just keep in mind. So like I said, we have the dash installed here. We also did the Daystar mounts. Now, if you're looking at this, you say, well, that looks like a factory bolt. Well, that's because it is. When we were putting this truck cab back on this frame, We set it down and we were kind of confused because we looked at the bolts, and if you're familiar with these cabs, there is a very large hole under here. Now let me go to the other side. I got the bolt sitting over there. I can show it to you. So you see this bolt here? This is an OEM bolt. This is actually the passenger or the driver's rear one. These are the bolts that they give you in the Daystar kit. You can see that it's a little bit different there. All right. So they don't give you any washers other than these. Now the Ford one has a washer. We stole this one to put on the other bolt because this bolt wasn't as in good of condition. All right, but if you look here, you see how that washer is not much bigger than the bolt itself. In fact, it may even slip in to that hole. So whenever you're doing the body mounts, and you buy a body mount kit, you want to make sure that they give you the right bolts, because this kit was definitely a lot cheaper, and that's why they chose to go that route. They didn't want to spend a lot of money on them. However, we still ended up having to use the original bolts because the bolts that came with the kit weren't big enough around. They didn't supply the washers for it either to make it strong enough to hold on the cab, because that hole in the cab is this large. So you don't get good sealing pressure on there, and we were afraid that it actually might suck this washer down into the cab. So we ended up being able to reuse our factory cab mounting bolts, which is great because they did thread into the Daystar lowers, which is great. However, this is something to keep in mind whenever you're buying body mounts. Now, if you buy the S&B kit, they give you new bolts that look like this. So while they are more money, they're worth the money. Obviously, the fan is not installed. However, this cab is completely installed, and hopefully it will be running here in a couple days. We have a new condenser to go in. Just have this here because sometimes you buy new condensers, they don't give you the studs. So we got to make sure that we use those studs if they don't come with. And then everything's plugged in over here, except for obviously the vacuum. We haven't done that yet. And we also have to finish securing this dash in here. But all the plugs are plugged in. Wanted to make sure that I got all the wiring in. You can see the bolt not there. But the dash was just loosely installed because we weren't sure if I was going to have to pull it out again to install the wiring harness that's up here. We have the antenna installed here. It did have a couple little abrasions on it, so we went ahead and put some heat shrink over those. And it is the marine grade, so it's nice and sealed up so that they don't have any reception issues. Other than really the body mounts, this went fairly simple. We still have some tidying up to do. You can see that we have all new brake lines and everything like that put in. Now that the cab's on, I can go through and tighten up all of the suspension parts, because whenever you are doing something like this, you always want to make sure that you tighten up your leaf spring bushings and shackles after your weight is on. Now, obviously, we're going to be putting more weight on this eventually with seats and doors and a hood and the rest of the front end here, but we are going to go ahead and get as much of this truck put together as possible before tightening up those suspension components, because you don't want to be putting undue stress on the bushings. But this is Luke's truck here, and what's nice about Luke's dad is he's a painter, so he painted this. He also painted the 2001 F350 that we did, and he does all of the paint work that I need done. So they did a great job on this, and they will be finishing up the body work themselves, but they don't like to do the mechanic work in the body shop because of the oils, and I really don't blame them. So that's why this truck is here. But getting moving along here on this truck, hopefully be done here shortly, and hopefully have this truck running and done so that they can take it home and finish it. Like you can see, there is a little bit missing here, and we're not doing a whole lot of videos on this truck because we are under a time crunch with this. But at the same time too, we're still taking our time getting everything put together, making sure that it is correct and that it's all tight, make sure that there's nothing that's been missed. make sure we don't have any issues along the way. Take care of anything that needs addressed as we go along. So if you guys have any questions about this truck or questions about other trucks that we've been covering, feel free to shoot me a message through email at garrettsobsgarage@gmail.com. So if you guys need any work like this done, a lot of guys don't want to do a cab swap. Body guys don't want to do it. We might be able to work something out if you want to do something like this to your truck. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate the subscriptions and the feedback that I've been receiving from everybody. I try to do a thorough job. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you on the next one.